All right. Oh. Okay, so when we read these, you will notice that all the directions are a little bit cut off, but it says, it's supposed to say establish a variable, which means that you're going to define your variable. Now, remember, when you define your variable, you go to that last sentence. If it says how many weeks, you're going to say X is weeks. How many miles? X is miles. How many sessions? X is sessions, and so forth. Chromebook should be shut. Write an inequality to represent the scenario and solve. Write a complete sentence to describe your solution. We're not going to do that part. All right. So the first one says, Keith has $500 in a savings account at the beginning of the summer. He wants to have at least $200 at the end of summer. He withdraws $25 per week for food, clothing, and movie tickets. How many weeks can Keith withdraw money from his account? So I go to the question, and the question's asking me to find what? How many weeks? So I'm going to define my variable and say X is going to be weeks. After I find that X is weeks, I go back, I read the question again. I'm underlining numbers, I'm circling operational words, and where I see weeks, that's where I'm putting my X. So he has $500 in a savings account. He wants to have at least is going to be my inequality words that we talked about the other day. At least $200 at the end of summer. He withdraws, that's an operational word. What operational word is that? Subtraction. So I'm going to put a subtraction on it. $25 per is an operational word. What's that? Multiplication. Oh, week. Oh, good. I see week. That must be where I put my X. Now, when I go to write this, I know that this is my inequality word, at least 200. So I know that that's going to go with my inequality. So these are the ones that I'm going to use to make my expression. So he has $500. He's withdrawing $25 per week. So he's starting with $500. He's withdrawing $25 every week. And he wants to have at least $200 at the end. So if you want to have at least 200, would you eat the X or eat the 200?
200. No, X.
I would eat the X because at least 200 means that you want 200 or you are happier with more. At least 200. So I would eat the X side, and at least means that you would be happy with 200, but you'd really like to have more. So there's my inequality, and then I'm going to solve it just like I solved my other inequalities. So I'm going to undo the addition and subtraction of the constant first. So that 500, it's positive 500. So I'm going to minus it. So 500 minus 500 is 0. So that's going to leave me with negative 25x is greater than or equal to negative 300. And then I'm going to divide by negative 25. And I do flip my sign because I'm dividing by a negative. And then 300 divided by negative 300 divided by negative 25 is 12. So 12 weeks. So he can spend money for 12 weeks. He could spend money for what? 2 weeks, 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 5 weeks, 0 weeks. But he cannot spend past that 12 weeks. So weeks that are less than or equal to 12. Because if he goes over 12, he's not going to have at least $200 in his account. All right. So let's look at this one. A taxi charges a flat rate of $1.75 plus an additional 65 cents per mile. If Erica has at most $10 to spend on the cab ride, how far could she travel? So the question's asking me to find how far can she travel, but what is she talking about in distance? What's the problem talking about in distance? Miles. So X is going to be miles because that's the distance that they're measuring in, the farness that they're measuring in. All right. So once I get that, then I can start writing my inequality. So I'm going to give you all a second to see what you can come up with, and then we'll go over it. So you don't have to solve it yet. Just set it up. All right. So it says the taxi charges a flat rate of $175 plus an additional. So there's my plus sign. 65 cents per is multiplication. Miles, there's where my X is going to go. That she has at most $10 to spend. So that's going to be my inequality part. So $1.75 plus the 65 cents per mile is at most $10. So if you have the most is 10, should you eat the X side or the 10? 10. 10's the most you have. And he's a hungry alligator and he always eats the biggest thing. So if 10 is the most you have, then that's the biggest. So at most 10. That's all. You can't go over 10 because that's all you got in your pocket. And then it's just a two-step inequality. So I'll undo the constant first. So the minus the 1.75. 1.75 minus 1.750. So I'm left with 65 cents X is less than or equal to 825. And then I'll divide by the 0.65. I don't need to flip my sign because I divide it by positive. So 8.25 divided by 0.65. And I get on my calculator 12.69 blah, blah, blah. I mean, I guess I could go 0.69 of a mile, but that's not really measurable, except even in your car.
Just 12 miles.
So we would just go to 12 miles. Why? Okay, here's my question. If somebody rounded this up to 13, why would that be wrong?
Because they don't have money.
That would be more than the $10. So that's why if I was going to round this, I would round it down to 12 miles. Because if I rounded this up to 13, watch what happens if I go 13 miles. 1.75 plus 0.65 times 13. It's going to cost me $10.20, and I don't have that. The most I have is $10. So that's why it has to round down.
Well, you better find some on the ground.
No. All right. I'm going to let you all try this third one. I'm not going to help you define your variable. You need to define that first.
We're solving this one too.
Yeah, go ahead and solve it. All right. So the question, how many DVDs? So X is going to be DVDs. So when I go back, I know we see a lot of DVDs, but you got to find the one that goes with the number. So he wants to order DVDs over the internet. Each is an operational word. What operational word is each? Multiplication. So each DVD costs $15.99. So that's where my X is going to go. And shipping the entire order costs $9.99 if he can spend no more than $100. So what do they do with shipping when you buy stuff? They add it on. So it's $15.99 for each DVD, so $15.99x plus the shipping, and it says it can be no more than 100. So should I eat the X side or the 100?
100.
The 100, because it can't be more than 100. If I eat the X side, they're saying that you need bigger than 100. Yep.
For shipping?
Mm-hmm.
How come that wouldn't be subtraction? Because you're losing money when they ship it.
But it's still talking about the total amount of money that you can spend.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's adding on to your order, the shipping. All right, so I'm going to subtract my $9.99. So it'd be $15.99x is less than or equal to, what is that, $91.01? Is that right? $90.01. And then I'll divide by the $15.99. All right, so my $90.01 divided by my $15.99, and I get 5.629. Blah, blah, blah. How many DVDs can he buy?
5.
5 or less. I have to round that down because if I rounded that up, he would be over his $100. So I have to round that one down. Yep.
I thought it would just be 5.6.
Yeah, well, you can't buy. That's a good thing. You can't buy just part of a DVD, so that's why I have to round it.
Okay.
Yep.
Miss Wilson.
Yep.
Is it okay that I rounded up like the 10.99 and the 15.99?
I mean, it would come out the same technically. Yes. Yes. Not all the time, no. All right, try this one. Shh. We're trying this one quietly. In that case, it would, but not all the time. That's not always a thing that I would get in the habit of.
Rounding up.
Before you do the math. All right. Shh.
It should be per week or session.
Sessions. So it says how many more sessions?
So it's always the question word?
Always the question mark. Yes, Jordan.
Can I use my key?
Just a second. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about. If you're gonna be quick, do you have any passes left? All right, yeah, go real fast. All right, I'm gonna talk about just defining your variable here. So it says how many more sessions. So X is sessions. Shh. So when you go back through, you're looking for the number that says sessions on it. Okay. So what's the only one that you see sessions next to? 3/4 says if you look at the 12, it says at least 12 hours per week. It doesn't say anything about sessions. She practices for 3/4 of an hour each session. So that's where my X is going to go, is with that 3/4. Okay, so if you hadn't got that far yet.
But how would we write a problem?
Well, I'm going to go over in just a second. Just try your best, and then I'll talk about it in just a second. All right, so she's trying to get at least 12 hours practice. So here's my question. If you practice, and it's a good thing to listen to, Jacob, if Adley practices for 2 hours on Monday, then she practices for 3 hours on Tuesday, and then she practices for 1 hour on Wednesday, how much has she practiced?
6 hours.
How'd you figure that out? By adding. So she's going to practice for 3/4 hour each session. So her sessions there, plus the 3 hours that she's already practiced, says that she needs to be at least 12 hours of practice a week. So that means 12 or more. So I had to add there. And then I'll subtract the 3. And then I'll multiply by the reciprocal. So X is greater than or equal, what is that, 12? So 12 more sessions. All right. Okay, so last one that we're going to do together. So do this one quietly. Yep.
I'll put a subtraction sign on the because it says she already practiced 3 hours.
She already practiced the 3 hours?
Yeah, so I put a
Well, but they're wanting her to practice like at least 12 hours a week, so it needs to be the total that she's practiced to make that at least 12. Yes?
I know.
Okay.
I wrote the inequality as 12 plus 3/4 x is less than or equal to 3, which I know that's wrong. I know the actual inequality symbol is wrong, but I got 12.
It might have just been a coincidence, but make sure that your 12 goes with your inequality here. So since it says at least 12, that 12 needs to stick with the inequality and not like on its own thing and not mix them with the other stuff.
I thought that she had already practiced.
All right. Shh. Guys, shh. Okay. So it says he makes a profit of $5.50 per bag on the line of natural dog food. The store wants to make a profit of no less than 5,225. How many bags of dog food does it need to sell? So X is the bags of dog food. All right, go back. It says that it's $5.50 per bag, so that's where my X is going to go. That's the only number, and he wants to make no less than the 5,225. So it's going to be the 550 times X, because per is times, no less than 5,225. So would I eat the X or the 5,000? The X, because I want it to be no less than that. It could be that, so I have the or equal to, but I'd like it to be more than that if it can. So this is just a one step. And then 5,225 divided by 550, 950 bags. All right, your all's job is to finish the back. It's homework if you